everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 2 of Vlognukah, and happy Boxing Day if you celebrate Boxing Day, and of course the second night of Hanukkah. This video is just going to be a sit down chat about all my thoughts and feelings of it being 1 year since I quit making sex ed content. So it was early December last year when I made the whole announcement that I was going to be moving away from the sex ed work that I was doing, and yeah, I can't believe that it's been a year. That is wild. And so it's time to get all reflective. 'Tis the season for it. But before I get into it, don't forget that throughout Vlognukah I am doing giveaways for my Patreon membership. All you have to do is become a free member of my Patreon and then find the posts for each of the Vlognukah videos, and all you have to do is comment on one of those posts, any of those posts, and I will be picking 8 random winners from each comment section and be gifting a month of free Patreon membership, and I'll be sorting all of that out in January. But I love my Patreon. It is a very good time, and Patreon have recently released gifting as a feature, and so I wanted to try it out and celebrate Vlognukah at the same time. So I have a lot of thoughts and feelings to get through in this video, and then I also asked my patrons for their questions. So let's get into it. First off, with a little recap if you're new here. So I had been making sex and relationships educational YouTube videos for over a decade. I've been making sex related podcasts for 5 years in the form of Banging Book Club and then the Doing It podcast. I'd become a certified sex educator. I'd done a few different training courses, and 1 year ago I walked away from it all. There were many reasons for this, and I explained them all and went into a lot of detail at the end of last year when I was making all the announcements and YouTube videos and podcasts and newsletters, etc, etc. So if you haven't watched those and you really want to dive into where I was at the time, those are the places to go. But the long story short is that I had a baby, I took some mat leave, I came back to work part-time. There was some financial strain because I was working less and I had outsourced more, so my costs were higher but my income had become lower, and then also my numbers in terms of views and podcast downloads just weren't the same when I came back from mat leave, which I always knew was something that could happen, and it was a risk that I was willing to take with taking the amount of time off that I did, which was 3 months. And I also noticed that my motivation, my passion, and my personal engagement in the topic and in the content was just not the same as it was before. And even before having a baby, for years and years, I'd never quite figured out how to manage the content treadmill of just constantly having to be in output mode and churning out new content and never really having time for input mode and for refilling the well. And so I just decided to get off the treadmill entirely. And also I just felt like I'd said everything that I wanted to say and was a bit bored, if I'm being honest. At the time, I knew something had to change because of all of these struggles, but I didn't know exactly what. And so I did a lot of soul searching, and that took a really long time. But once I'd figured out that I needed to quit the sex ed stuff, it felt good, it felt right, and then took action. We made a plan and we executed that plan. In practical terms, I stopped uploading on my sex ed, my big YouTube channel, and I also stopped the Doing It podcast. But I've continued obviously making videos here. I've had quite a few people say to me over the year oh, I thought you quit YouTube. And I'm like, no, I'm still here, I'm doing this. So there's the recap. Now, the initial aftermath. So this is the initial aftermath of me announcing the big change and my career pivot, or the career swivel, as someone has described it to me recently, which I love. And it honestly felt incredible. There was such an outpour of support, not only from my audience, but also from peers and colleagues and friends and family. I really felt the content creator community and then also the sex ed community really just support me in the decision that I'd made, which felt really good. It felt very reassuring. A lot of new people joined my Patreon around that time, which was very surprising to me and I wasn't really expecting. But then also we immediately launched into Vlognukah because of the timings of when Hanukkah was last year. And so it was a very intense and full on time. So I'd kind of done all of my reflecting previously, and then I was kind of just in like work execution mode because we had a lot of videos to make and publish before breaking for Christmas. So we made it through that, and then when I came back after the Christmas New Year break, it was new year, new me. And it really did feel like that. I felt returning to work an immediate sense of relief. There was just such a stark difference to me. I felt all of the mental and emotional and financial burdens that I'd been feeling for the last year, 2 years, lifted. In terms of finances, my business bank balance immediately started looking healthier, down to the costs that I'd cut because I stopped working with some team members as I downsized a lot of the company. For some reason, I don't know if it was the time of year or because I was able to spend more time on this channel, I don't know, but a lot of brand deals came in for this channel. There were a couple months where every video was sponsored, and it just made me relax. It was very reassuring. And then at the end of March, I moved out of my studio, so that was a whole other big cost of mine that just disappeared overnight. And I've been working from home ever since. And then the Patreon has been an interesting one because I had initially forecast to like lose about 1/3 of my Patreon income. And initially in December, it went up, but kind of as expected, it has been steadily decreasing and going down throughout this year. But I've reshuffled my tiers to hopefully like reflect more the kind of work and the community building that I'm doing now, rather than it being like you're supporting sex ed content. So yes, the number of actual people and like patrons has gone down. The amount that I'm earning from Patreon hasn't gone down as drastically as I had originally predicted. Basically, I've not lost like 1/3 of my Patreon income. And then of course I started my consultancy and coaching work this year, and there's going to be a whole other vlognukah video all about that, so I won't go into the details here. The other thing that I really noticed at the beginning of the year was just like how much extra time that I had, which may be clear from the Artist's Way videos that I made, because I had time for these artist dates where like once a week, and I work a 4-day week and those days are short, but I would block out an entire afternoon, like an entire half day, just to like do something fun and creative. And I needed it. Let me tell you, the beginning of this year, I needed it. I just felt so good. And I also found myself throwing myself into short form content and actually getting really excited about experimenting with it and just having the time, but also the mental capacity to be like, oh, I want to try that, and then being able to do it, rather than it just always feeling like something at the bottom of my list and like never getting to it and it stressing me out. The other thing that I felt like I had a lot more mental capacity and time for were these videos that I've been making this year that span longer periods of time. So like vlogging the Artist's Way, that was 12 weeks. The TikTok strategy vlog, that was 8 weeks. Some of my reading vlogs take, you know, a couple of months, a few months, because I'm not a very fast reader. And then the bedroom redecorating and renovation, like that's taking months. But I feel like before I would not have had the capacity to be like, I'm going to be working on this one video for like a really long period of time. But I've really kind of like leaned into that this year, and it's been a lot of fun. The other thing that's been a lot of fun is feeling just more connected with my audience. I think because I was so stressed and kind of on the road to burnout previously, I was a lot more distant from my audience, but I just feel like I've been engaging with them a lot more, not just in my Patreon Discord server, but like on Instagram stories, and actually like having my DMs turned on and like reading the DMs, even if I'm obviously not able to reply to them all, but it just feels like there's something really good going on there. And honestly, I think the community and the engagement and the things that we all talk about and care about together are probably the main reason why I just can't sack off YouTube entirely, even though I do have like my moments of like, what if I walked away from all of it? But then the community, I mean, and let's be real, the attention on Hannah is just so special to me. And then also just starting the beginning of this year and not worrying about like, what sex ed topic am I covering next? Feeling the pressure to cover topics that have been requested that I feel like I've covered before and just don't interest me anymore. Stressing about that I never have time to like read sex ed books and actually like research topics because I'm just in content output mode, and struggling to find new ways to say the same things over and over again. So it's been really great to just like not have to worry about that at all. So that was kind of like, I would say, the first half of this year that was feeling really good for all of those reasons. But once the dust had settled, as I mentioned, over time with Patreon, it just kind of going down, which again is to be expected, but it is one of those things where I'm like, ooh, can I change this? Can I reverse the tide? But also I just have to remember that I'm doing something very different than I was doing last year, and many people have joined specifically to support the sex ed content. So it's like, Hannah, you predicted this? It's such a different thing of like predicting something and rationally knowing this is probably going to happen, and then when it actually happens, you being like, ugh. But I just have to let it go because I'm like, obviously. And one of the things I always say about my Patreon is that it's entirely optional. I'm an adult, you're an adult. I set out on my Patreon in terms of what I want to offer, what the prices that I want to set are, what I'm willing to do in terms of my level of engagement there. And you're adults who can make your own financial decisions. And that's it, really. And we just all have to accept that. But I'm feeling really good about the Patreon now, especially since making the tier changes, because it wasn't sitting right just keeping it the same when so much had changed. And especially with the live streams, like that tier had definitely got a bit quieter and live streams were quieter, and I was like, would I rather have the live streams at a higher price tier but less people come, or would I rather have a busier live stream and a more like active live stream but at a lower price? I picked the latter because that was more important to me. So I'm very happy with where the Patreon is currently at, and I feel like it accurately reflects what it is that I'm doing in the community that we're building there. And the book club has been so much fun, and we'll definitely be doing that again next year. So as I mentioned, I had a really good run with brand deals in like Q1, Q2. Felt very busy and full on, and I could feel my bank balance just like replenishing and getting healthier. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I will be able to save some more money for a potential, hopefully, baby number 2. And then Q3 in the summer happened, and there were just no other brand deals. And this is very normal, like in terms of the way that the influencer marketing world works, is that the summer does tend to be a lot quieter, unless you're an LGBTQ plus creator, because then all of your work basically comes during Pride and then it's quiet the rest of the year. So obviously it depends on like what niche and stuff you're in, but generally summer can be quite quiet, and then it like ramps up autumn, winter, pre-Christmas, when everyone's got their like, you know, holiday season marketing budgets, and then it's usually kind of quiet again January, February, and then spring is a big one as well. So I kind of knew this, and it's very normal. But also coming into, at the time of me filming this, coming into like my busiest time in terms of, you know, all the vlognukah videos, I actually haven't had any other sponsors come in. So there is a bit of me like, oh, this is supposed to be like the busiest time in terms of sponsorships, but that's not really happening. So that's kind of a bit like, okay, is it because I've been saying publicly that I'm trying to figure out a way to phase out brand deals entirely? That honestly would depend on either my consulting business like really taking off, or my Patreon getting bigger again. We will see. But I say no other sponsorships have come through because, of course, I've been working with Squarespace all year. And so that has been a really helpful thing to have in terms of like knowing at the beginning of the year that I'm doing 2 sponsored videos a month with Squarespace, and it's for this amount of money. And that has been very helpful to have in the calendar. Speaking of which, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Who knew? Who knew? Not me. No, I did. I knew. I planned it. So I host my website on Squarespace, and it is so easy to use as somebody who has very little website design experience, and especially as this year we have been gradually making like little tweaks here and there to the website and like changing it up based on, you know, my new career and reflecting the new things that I'm doing and, you know, getting rid of other things and adding other bits. So having a Squarespace website has been crucial to that being a very easy process. And whether you are starting out in the freelance world or you're a small business owner, Squarespace makes it super easy for you to create your own website, engage your audience, and sell anything from physical and digital products to courses and even your time, all in one place and all on your terms. Squarespace's new design intelligence empowers anyone to build their own beautiful website, personalized and tailored to you using AI technology. And with Squarespace Blueprint, you just answer a few questions and it takes you on a fully guided tour, holds your hand through the process of designing your own website with everything that you need, from building out your color palette, your fonts, the branding, everything. And Squarespace has a huge suite of visual design tools to help you create a really engaging website. They have tons of effects built in and ready to go on any Squarespace website, and there are loads of options to pick from to fit whatever your brand or your business is. So you can head to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and then when you are ready to launch your creation into the world, you can go to squarespace.com/morehannah to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Carrying on with the money chats. So yes, once the dust had settled, I definitely felt that there was this reduced income, which was to be expected. I did a lot of financial forecasting of like, okay, I'm going to lose this much in brand deals. I'm going to lose this much in Patreon. I'm going to lose this much in affiliate income. And I kind of figured it all out and made peace with that. But as well as the reduced income, there was also reduced overheads. So downsizing my team, getting rid of the studio, only making videos for one YouTube channel rather than two. So like halving the amount of editing that I needed. So that relieved a lot of financial stress, but I have found that my expenses haven't reduced as much as I would like them to. Like the initial hit of a lot of expenses and overheads like disappearing was like huge relief, but I think with the reduced income, the difference between the two hasn't been like as much as I would like, and especially because recently my editor's rates went up, which is totally fair. I want to pay you what you deserve, but then of course you have to, as your own business, factor that into your other decisions that you're making and, you know, make choices and decisions and kind of like figure shit out. So the beginning of the year felt really good, and the second half of the year is not bad by any means, but the highs of the beginning of the year definitely did not continue as much as I would have liked them to. With the new consulting work, obviously this is my first year doing it, and I had no expectations that I was going to earn enough from it that it would replace my previous income, but I have earned some money from it, so well done me. And we will see next year when I make my annual revenue streams income pie chart video. We will see there how much of the pie that it has taken up. I'm also aware that because I do vlognukah and I publish these videos during the time of the year where companies' advertising spend is at its highest. Why do you think everyone does Vlogmas? Come on, people. That YouTube CPM, it's much higher. CPM is cost per meal, and it's like how much you get paid per 1,000 views. And it fluctuates depending on the time of year, type of content you make, yada, 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 all of that stuff. But because all of that obviously happens in December, it basically means that I will get a nice YouTube AdSense paycheck in January. So it is always handy for me to know that no matter like how the year has gone, if I do Vlognukah, I know that I will start the year with a nice healthy bit of cash inflow in the business. The other thing that is kind of interesting to me once the dust had settled was what happened to my time. Like at the beginning of the year, I had all of this extra time and I was going on artist dates and I was making lots of short form content. But as soon as I finished that Artist Way video, even though in that video I was like, oh my God, I love artist dates so much, did I do a single one after that? No. Is it because I need the accountability of making a video to actually do a thing? Possibly. But I also felt like I just didn't have the time anymore. And maybe that's because my consulting work was picking up by that point, I don't know. And then I also felt myself run out of steam with short form content towards the end of this year. I had a really good go of it, especially obviously when I made that video where I was working with a TikTok expert on my TikTok strategy. But I definitely just felt myself run out of steam with it at the end of this year. However, it's been on my goals list like all year to not take social media too seriously and for it only to be fun and if and when I want to do things. And so even though like I naturally turn to, oh God, like I've not made a reel in weeks, like my Instagram engagement is going down, all of that kind of stuff, I'm like, Hannah, relax. This isn't one of your goals. Like if it were one of my goals, if I'd actually kind of like been like, this is important to me, then yeah, worry about it. And, you know, use that energy to take action and move forward. But I have to remember, like, Hannah is not one of your priorities. The main priority is having a healthy and fun and creative relationship with it. And that doesn't mean like pressuring myself and stressing about creating short form content. But I do find it weird that I just haven't felt like I've had the time for it. But maybe it is because it's just become less of a priority, so I've not blocked it into the calendar, because that was literally the only way that I was able to do it, even when I was like, oh, this is fun, was I still blocked it into the calendar, because otherwise shit ain't gonna get done. That's just the way that my brain works. The other thing that has felt like a theme all year is just that I've been holding myself back. And that is because this year, me and my partner have been trying to conceive for baby number 2. And so I have very much been working under capacity. I got very sick in my first trimester with my first and basically couldn't work for 2 months. And so all year, I just feel like I've been in this like limbo space, in this purgatory of trying to conceive and not knowing if or when it's going to happen, not wanting to really throw myself all into new ventures like the consulting work or like short form content or whatever it might be, because I'm afraid that I'll overcommit and then have to pull back. So I've just felt like all year I've not been able to physically or mentally give it my all, because my main priority is getting pregnant and I want to be kind of like stress-free to help that happen. But then also I don't want to let people down if I overcommit and then have to draw back. But it is important to me in this season of my life that the work that I am taking on is very easy for me to dial it up or dial it down depending on family situation, depending on health situation. But obviously I was really hoping that I would be pregnant by now. And so there is this element of like, oh my God, can I really do a whole other year of work feeling like I'm holding myself back, feeling like I'm not able to like give everything? And even though rationally I'm like, just go for it, like just put everything into it, and if you have to cancel, if you have to like change things, like do it, like that's what you did last time. But I don't know, there's something, it's like I just don't have it in me. It doesn't feel like something I can just like switch on and just be like, right, I am now going to 110% like commit to this. Like I don't know how to describe it, but there's just something in me, the desire to get pregnant, that is just holding me back, and I don't feel like I have any control over that. There's just like, there is a wall in terms of like how much I'm able to give right now. Why is this making me emotional talking about? So that's been tough mentally. But then also on the flip side of it, because two sides to every coin, on the other side, there is this element of like, things have been like nice and easy for me and like stress-free, and I've had like a lot of free time this year. I feel like I'm working under capacity, which, you know, is a real privilege, and love that for me. But of course, the like whole underlying reason for why I'm working under capacity is because I desperately want to have another baby and be pregnant, and I'm not. And so two sides, baby, two sides. So the other thing that I've noticed this year that's been kind of funny and I'm figuring out is the whole being a lifestyle influencer thing. So before, obviously, when people ask me what I did, I would be like, I make YouTube videos, like about what? I'm like, oh, sex and relationships. And then we just kind of talk about that rather than getting into this channel and the lifestyle stuff. Now, I do not have that anymore. I do not have that as my go-to interesting, noble thing that I do. And maybe it's my own like internal snobbery about lifestyle content, but I struggle now whenever people ask me what I do or what I make content about. I kind of shrug it off of like, oh, I just make lifestyle content. But I don't really feel like that accurately describes what I do. And so I have been experimenting a bit recently when I've had conversations where people have asked, and instead of just like giving it the umbrella term and summarizing it as lifestyle content, I kind of say, oh, I make content about parenting and work and fashion and books. I feel like those are maybe my main pillars. I don't know. Like parenting and work, being a working mum who loves secondhand fashion and reading. Is that my brand? I don't like, what is my brand? Yeah, there has definitely been like a creator identity confusion that I've had this year. So my previous identity as a creator, I would say, was probably like being a sex nerd, but that is still very much like me personally. So we had the Patreon book club this year where we read non-fiction sex and relationships books, and that has been so good. I've probably read more sex and relationships books this year than I had in the previous like 3 years, like since Rowan was born, when I was actually making sex ed content. So that feels really good. And I love it. And I love reading these books that have been on my TBR for ages and then getting to chat about them with my patrons and like all of us like reading it together and discussing it. But I recognize that that's enough for me. Like, I read these books and then I have no desire beyond the book club to really do anything with what I'm learning. So I feel like that's a really good sign in terms of the decisions that I made about my work last year. I enjoy the books. It is satisfying my interest in sex and relationships. And then that's it. I don't want or need any more. Who knew that you could read non-fiction books just for personal interest? And I think I also just noticed how quickly you kind of can move away from something once you stop using that muscle. So I was always, as much as possible, tuned into sex and relationships, content and conversations that were happening online. And there are obviously some people that I still follow because they're my friend or I like what they do, but I have noticed that I've taken a step back also from sex and relationships content just because I don't know, I've not been using that muscle. I'm less like personally engaged with it. There is an element of it feeling too much like my past work, and I'm like, no, I stepped away from this. Like, I don't want it. Like, why am I seeing this? Like, there is a weird element of like, oh no, like that, which is entirely me and nothing to do with the content creators, obviously. But it just showed me like how much I was engaging with that content for work, to feel plugged in, to kind of get ideas and inspiration and to learn. But I don't have those same needs or purpose or desire anymore. So yeah, I feel like I've got my books and my book club and I'm good. So what's next? Obviously continuing this YouTube channel and being a lifestyle content creator, working on the tagline. I would love to hit 100k on this channel, but I've never set like numbers as a goal for this channel. And I know that my content is so geared towards the people who already know me. If you think about like the purpose behind content of like what it aims to do, like you've got the camp of this is the content for the community, for the people who are in the know, for the people who get it. And then over here is the content for new people, for people who have no idea who you are and are finding you for the first time. It's kind of a bit more trend or SEO driven. It's more geared to that, the non-subscribers and the subscribers. I basically like make 99% of my videos are here. So obviously I'm not going to grow. If you want to grow, you have to make these kinds of videos. I'm not particularly interested in making those kinds of videos. If people do find these ones and they like them and they want to stick around, great. So I don't really have the strategy for hitting 100k at my current growth rate. I think it's going to be like 2 or 3 years before I hit 100k, and anything could happen in 2 or 3 years. So hopefully I have another child. So we'll see. Subscribe if you haven't. Maybe I just need to start like saying subscribe in videos. Do subscribers even matter anymore? I just want the 100k. I want the silver play button. Is that shallow of me? Maybe. I don't want it. My newsletter is continuing every month. Obviously, as I said, with social media, it is a low priority for me, especially as like Meta does not pay. It's really hard for me to justify like a huge amount of time spent on it when I've got other priorities. But hopefully going to be continuing the like healthy dose of like as and like when I feel like creating stuff. I actually currently have a huge list of ideas for short form content, but because I'm in the middle of vloggukah, I'm like, of course I would get all of these ideas for some short form stuff when I'm like knee deep in vloggukah. So hopefully when things calm down a bit for me, I can be like, right, let's bash some of these out. I've got a lot of question marks around LinkedIn strategy, especially when it comes to my like consulting and coaching work. Like talking about that feels more appropriate on a platform like LinkedIn. Do I do a whole other video where I like hire a LinkedIn expert to help me with my LinkedIn strategy? Because I feel like I know less about LinkedIn than I do TikTok. Even though, funny story, when I was at university, I was a LinkedIn mentor for other students. So I knew a lot about LinkedIn 12 years ago, not anymore. With Patreon, obviously continuing the book club and all of the other stuff that happens over there, I'm hoping to take my consulting and coaching work up a notch, doing a coaching certification course next year, actually going to be listing what my services are on my website and hopefully spending more time on that, not on making the website, but on the actual coaching. And then when it comes to the money and the financial side of things in terms of what's next, I definitely feel like I'm not where I want to be or need to be, especially with hopefully another baby coming, another mat leave to financially support. So I could like go all in with some kind of growth strategy on my YouTube channel and try and increase the numbers. And so that would have like a follow-on effect of higher AdSense, maybe being able to charge more for brand deals. Like, I don't know, do I need to invest more in the YouTube channel or do I need to cut more costs on the YouTube channel? Like, which is it? Brand deals, as I've said, I'm becoming more and more disenfranchised from them, but they do currently take up 45% of my income. So it's not something that I can get rid of overnight, but I do feel some sort of like 5-year plan forming where I no longer need to do brand deals. And then when I think about, okay, what do I actually have control over? Because I could put more into the YouTube channel, but there is still an element of like a lot of that being out of your control in terms of the algorithms and people liking videos and subscribing or whatever. But the things that I feel like I have like actual tangible control over in terms of I take an action and I see a result is Patreon and my consulting and coaching work. So I kind of feel like those are the two places, other than obviously this YouTube channel, where I need to be focusing my attention, especially if, you know, I want to balance out the books a bit better. Speaking of Patreon, well done if you've made it this far, by the way. We're on to some of my patrons' questions. Do you miss sex ed? I feel like I miss the people and the community. I have definitely received some like invites to certain like brand events that are related to sex ed, but I just can't really justify going to them, even if I would want to be in the room with all of those people and chat to everyone who was there. So I miss that element of it, but I don't miss like actually working in it. Are you happy with how the content and the interaction with your community has evolved? For sure. I am so grateful for this community and the fact that people have just been like along for the ride and this journey with me for years. Like many of you have maybe even been watching my videos for like over a decade. Like that is wild to me. Also, hi, love you if you're new. But even just the fact that I have been making YouTube videos for almost like 15 years now, I think the reason why I've been able to stick around for so long is because I always swivel or pivot so that I follow like what I love making, because I've made loads of changes over the year. I didn't start out making sex ed content. I followed that interest, and then when I started this channel because I wanted to like do more of this kind of videos, and then I stopped doing the sex ed stuff. Every so often I like create a whole new series. So yeah, I've always felt, I think, very good about how my content and my audience and the community has evolved. And I think the evolution is what has allowed me to really stay in the game this long, if I'm being honest. Does it already work out money-wise? So it is definitely working out more. It is better than it was. It's not where I would want it to be, but I have a whole lot less financial worries than I did this time last year. How is your mental health now compared to the last few years doing your previous work? So I definitely feel like my mental health is a lot better for all the reasons mentioned before. Just like there is a lot less stress and a lot less kind of burdening me. I think with making sex ed content, because it is so important in terms of how it impacts people's lives, there is a lot of pressure to get things right. And I really felt that. And there is this element of me being like, oh, well, you took the coward's approach and you just like abandoned ship. But then the outcome of that is I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I do feel a lot more free now. Like that pressure, I didn't kind of realize how much it was really impacting me. So yeah, I definitely feel just a lot lighter. And I did go to therapy at the beginning of this year because I was like, I just need to check that the internet hasn't like messed up my brain in some ways. And I did 6 weeks and we were like, I think I'm okay. So that was good. What were some of your anxieties about quitting sex ed that ended up not being a big deal? Ooh, I think I was worried that like my sex ed colleagues and peers would disapprove, like would feel like I was abandoning them or feel like, you know, I was maybe taking like an easy way out, which yeah, to some degree, but the support that I got from them of like the messages that I received from people that I really respect, from friends and colleagues and peers, I was like, oh wow, okay, thank you. I was kind of really expecting to kind of like really not hear anything, if I'm honest. Like I wasn't expecting anyone to be like outwardly mean to me, obviously. Like people in sex ed tend to be like very lovely people, like brilliant people. And yeah, and they were brilliant. I shouldn't have doubted them. But it was definitely like an anxiety of like, oh my God, are they going to approve? Are they going to feel like I'm letting them down? But in the end, they just like said they were very proud of me. Would you ever dip back into doing sex ed content if there were an issue you particularly wanted to talk about, e.g. a one-off video or social media posts? I don't think so, because I've needed like the clean cut. Like the idea of being like half in, half out of like, oh, if something comes along, maybe I'll make a video about it, like stresses me out to no end. And so I just think for my like own peace of mind, I need to be like, no, there is like a firm boundary here. I've even had some like requests for brand deals from like menstrual period underwear, like related stuff. And you know, that is kind of like lifestyle adjacent, but then it's also like sex ed adjacent. And it like sits somewhere in this like gray area where I'm like, oh, would I do that again or no? But because it's murky, again, for my own peace of mind, I've just been like, no, I have to separate it just for me, if that makes any sense. I'm going to be interested to see how I kind of evolve and react as Rowan gets older and goes to school and starts like receiving sex and relationships education in school, and whether that, you know, galvanizes me. So who knows? That is years ahead of us. Do you miss being invited to sex ed events with other creators? Yes. So I do still occasionally get an invite, but I'm like politely no. But I do miss going to some of the brand events because they were often quite fun and you get to see everybody. But I have been to the odd book launch because these are people who, you know, they're my peers, they're my friends, and I still want to, you know, support their achievements. And so I've been to a few book events. And then of course, I run a sex and relationships book club on my Patreon. So I can kind of like justify it that way because I'm like, oh, we can add this book to our long list of books to vote on. How has the career change affected brand deals? I assume your content is more ad friendly now. Have you had to decline sex toy brand deals you've done previously? Not just declined, just like cut entirely. And those were some of the most well-paid ones. And yeah, obviously this content on this channel is more brand friendly, but I don't really feel like much has changed in terms of the brand deals that I do here, because obviously I've had this channel for 5 years now as well. So this channel kind of like has already built its own identity with brand deals separate to the sex ed stuff already. I'm still yet to break into the like parenting, marketing, brand deals world. I don't know if that's what I want, but I do find it interesting that I don't really get many of those requests. I'm not mummy vlogger enough. Do you ever think about going back to sex ed, but not in video form? Talks, classrooms, etc.? No. That fills me with more dread, I think. And it's probably because that is not something that I have experience in, so it would take a lot more like upfront work to get that kind of together, and it's not as well paid. So I'm just not in a position right now to pick something that's going to take me a lot more time, more stress, and not pay as well. I just do not have the ability to do that right now. And also I don't want to. There's that. How many books about sex have you read since quitting sex ed? Good question. How many Patreon book club books have we read this year? So we did Come Together by Emily Nagoski, Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay, Will I Ever Have Sex Again by Sophie Hagen, and The State of Affairs by Esther Perel. So we did 5 books this year. 5! I read 5! Definitely haven't read 5 the previous year. Love it. Do you still talk about sex and similar topics with friends the same amount? Probably. I feel like probably. I don't really feel like it was ever something I talked about with friends a lot. Maybe occasionally I'd be like, oh, this thing I learned for work, or like this thing that I discovered recently, and maybe tell friends about it. So that's maybe not happening as much anymore. Oh no, but maybe it is because of the books. I think it's the same. I think the way that I interact with like sex ed in my personal and private life is very similar, if not more, because I'm able to read more books now. What's one work habit / practice you had to give up when you pivoted away from sex ed content? Masturbating and calling it research. That's the only thing I can really think of. Obviously I still masturbate, but I can't call it research anymore, can I? Alas, alas. What have I given up? Okay, this has been a much longer video than I expected, but thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons for your brilliant questions. If you do have any more thoughts and questions, do leave them in the comments. I will hopefully get back to you Boxing Day. We'll see. I hope you're all doing well. Don't forget to check out the post, the Patreon post, link in the description if you want to enter the giveaway, free gifting Patreon membership thing. Need a better name for it. The vlognukah Patreon extravaganza. Anyway, and I'll see you tomorrow for another vlognukah video. Bye!